comes to mind when you look at this photo?
Well, again, this was over where the salt marsh flats were at.
Okay.
It used to be there until Saddam drained them all. And this was just a guy with his belongings moving through the countryside, and a few places where you actually seen water.
Really?
Yeah, on the ground. So.
Wow. What about this photo here?
So we had to go into town looking for some electrical wiring or something. I can't remember exactly. And so this is a town right outside. You see all the palms and all that stuff. So this is right outside the Palace of Babylon, not too far. Those are two of my Marines. That's our Hummer right there. And we're looking for a little electrical store where we can find some wiring to take back in with us.
Yeah.
And you know, you see the people in the background there. You can kind of see where it looks like there's probably vendors and stuff like that. You see people looking over towards us, but they're going about life.
Yeah, I'm looking at the body language of the three Marines we can see, and I see there's another Marine in the back, and you know, I can see 5 altogether, but the 3 that we can see pretty clearly, just the body language looks pretty casual and suggests to me that there wasn't a feeling that, you know, there were threats. I just don't get the feeling that these guys feel like this is a potentially dangerous situation.
No, and we didn't. Again, because our purpose there now is to help gain that trust, but at the same time we need to make sure we're protected. But just to say something about those guys in that picture, those Marines are reserve unit, and they're part of 6th Comm Reserve Unit out of New York City.
Wow.
So these guys are contractors, they're firemen, they're police officers, they're just local people, ordinary people who are in the Marine Corps Reserves.
Okay.
These guys, their unit lost a Marine gunny sergeant and a Marine first sergeant. One was a police officer, one was a fireman. When the World Trade Center came down, they went in to help rescue people. So this unit, if any Marine unit deserved to be in Iraq, these guys did. So these were all junior Marines that I'm working with here. But man, I tell you what, it was an honor to be with those guys because they were there.
Yeah, they'd had the experience with 9/11.
Yes.
I'm guessing if we fast forward 3 years to 2006, that the body language wouldn't be that casual.
No. It's totally different.
It's a totally different scene.
These guys are wearing, you know, the vehicles. This vehicle isn't hard. You can see we got soft shell cover on the convertible, you know, on the cab, and you know, we got a couple sandbags in the back. You don't see a turret. You know, you don't see any armor on that vehicle. You see the guys wearing just a regular flax and helmets, but no, it was totally different.
Yeah. Another reminder of that very early phase of the war when it seemed like the thing was won quickly and everything was going to work out.
Well, and the one thing too in that picture is when you're talking 3 years ahead of time, again, it wasn't the people that you see there, it was the people that were blending in with them.
The insurgents coming into the country.
Right.
Some of the old military guys who had who had put on civilian clothes. Let's come to this photo here. Why is this an important photo to you?
So, yeah, so there's, you know, you see 3 guys in there, but this is down at the bottom of the palace in Babylon. This is, you know, a bunch of guys that we brought in that were working. The guy I got my arm on, that's Abid Hussein. He was a national ping pong champion who played in the Olympics for Kuwait. And so he didn't have to go to combat. He wasn't required, but his younger brother was in the military during Desert Storm 10 years earlier.
On the Iraqi side?
On the Iraqi side, yes. You know, had to serve.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that shortly. But Abid was my interpreter. Very nice guy. He was a Muslim who lived next to, I talked earlier on one of the other things about living next door to Christians and all that type of stuff, and he was very eager to let me know in some of his pictures, you know, these are my neighbors, they were Christians, you know, we're Muslims, we got along fine. And so we're just breaking. He brought in some local Iraqi food, and so I'm sitting on my lunch and my MREs eating their local food, and just building those relationships. But those
Sure.
guys you see, as well as all the guys in all the other pictures, every single one of those guys had a physical or emotional scar that Saddam and his military used to keep those guys suppressed. You know, they were missing body parts, they had scars on their backs, their sisters, their mothers, their daughters had been raped, their sons were forced, their brothers were forced to serve in the military.
Just part of Saddam Hussein's reign of terror, really.
Reign of terror for 25 years, yeah. So if you
Wow.
think about the age of these guys, Abid, he's got teenage kids. So if you think about his age, that before he had children, Saddam had taken over, and so now his kids all grew up in this hate America, hate the West mentality, this thought process.
Culture of fear.
Yeah, and all these guys had experienced that. All their children were born into that culture,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and so that was the culture that now our guys are dealing with.
Sure.
Not the older generation, but
Right.
all these insurgents were the young ones that we need to make a living. We need to have something, and of course, again, you go back to the Taliban, you go back to all these different groups that
Yeah.
we can provide you something right now,
Mhm.
you know.
Right, insurgent groups come in and then begin to pay, you know, poor folks to be intelligence workers for us, plant IDs for us, join the insurgency, and all that kind of thing. Let's go back to this photo here, and so tell us about this photo.
Yeah, so this is one of the mass grave sites that we uncovered after the war. I had two interpreters. I talked about the 6 comm reserve unit. There was 2 young Marines that were part of that comm unit that actually spoke language. And so we were using them to help with Abid to help locate these mass grave sites so that we could dig them up and the people can do their proper burials. So Abid, the guy in the photo before, he came up to me one day. It's Chris, Mr. Dyer. Actually, it was Mr. Chris. My brother is at the gate. I need to go talk to him. He came back. Hey, they found my mom. And I'm thinking they
So
found my mom in a jail or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
And so he comes back and they found my mom in one of the grave sites, and so I'm like, you know, I need some time to go, you know, find her and take care of her and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And I said, well, go. And he's like, I can't go because I don't want to lose my job, you know. And I said, Abid, you got a job. You go take care of your mom. And, you know, I gave him some money because, you know, we were only paying him, as my senior guy, we were paying him $2 a day
Wow.
to do what he was doing. And so, you know, I gave him some money and said, don't worry about it. You know, take as many days you need. Go bury your mom. And yeah, so that was a hard, and so when he came back and you see that image of the mass grave sites, so
Yeah.
you know, the skeletons, there's clothing fabrics remaining with them, and they were able to identify their mom because of a photo that they found in the black dress that she was wearing that was pretty much decayed, because his mom was killed 10 years earlier, right?
No,
So
I mean, do you know what the background story is? Who are these
are just
people, and how did they end up in this mass grave?
random. So like I can tell you, like with Abid, his mom was executed because his son, or his brother, who was the picture that they found in her pocket, and that's how they were able to identify it was his mom, but she had a picture of her other son, the younger son, who was forced into the military to fight against us 10 years earlier. And so because he deserted the military to not fight,
Oh boy.
mom was captured, his sister was captured, and they were both executed. And when they got his brother, he was executed as well. So Abid lost 3 people.
Because one brother deserted from the Iraqi military.
He did not want to fight against Americans, right? Excuse me.
So this is, I mean, this is, you know, a basic way Saddam Hussein maintains control by keeping the population in such a state of fear.
Yeah, and so the thing is what was really grotesque about this whole process was they would gather these people up, they'd go dig a ditch. They'd dig a ditch, and then they'd be executed. And then they'd bring another group of people in who would bury those people and dig a ditch, and they'd be executed. And this was, you know, 3 or 4 times a week, maybe 3 or 4 times a day in different areas. There was a ton of mass grave sites.
Wow.
And this was starting right after Desert Storm.
Wow.
You know, and so being able to find these mass grave sites, it was a lot of closure for her. But to go there and have to go through body after body after body to see if this is going to be my mom or my brother or somebody, you know.
Yeah. No, that's a photo you took personally?
Yeah, yeah.
At that site. I mean, did that affect how you thought about the possibility of Iraq being, you know, I mean, you know, the hope was that Iraq could be a well-functioning country, remove Saddam Hussein, maybe even Iraq could become a well-functioning democracy. I don't know the extent to which you think about that stuff, but obviously you find these mass graves. You know, people are going to want revenge and all sorts of things. I don't know. Did finding these mass graves shape your thinking about whether this country really can get on its feet? I mean, are the hatreds too deep, or?
I don't know, because again, so this is still, I'm in country still, right? So Saddam Hussein wasn't captured till after I left. So Saddam is still on the loose. Nobody knows where he's at and all this. So there's still the fear of when the Americans leave, what could possibly happen. But us helping them find these mass grave sites, helping them, you know, find closure, burying their family members properly, mourning for them properly, and all that type of stuff. We were there. We were helping them. We were amongst the bodies. We were moving them out of the ground. And I got to believe that built trust and relationship and a sense of gratitude and all that, right? That confirmed what we've seen at the beginning of the war with all the kids, right?
Yeah.
So again, when I'm leaving, it's there is hope for this country. They're going to trust us, that we're going to be able to help them rebuild and all this type of stuff. And again, you know, we're 15 years.
I mean, you have to say that then the insurgents were successful, weren't they? They continued to sow fear. They helped to ensure that trust would not be built. I mean, I think, you know, if we talk about some of the policies of you know, at the highest levels of the U.S. government, I mean, some of those policies were questionable. But at the street level, you know, that sowing of fear, Saddam Hussein's not here any longer, but now we have these tribal animosities, the insurgents, you know, again, the insurgents live among us. The Marines are on their base, but the insurgents live among us. And, and just sort of the inability of the folks in that country to gain some sense of trust. Let me just sort of anticipate our next and last discussion. You got out of the Marines when?
In October 2003.
Oh, in October 2003. So you're out, I mean, what, you got home in May of 2003?
June. Yeah,
June of 2003. And so you're out, I mean, before 2003 is up. 2005, 2006, you know, I forget when the surge was. I think was that 2006, when a lot more troops get pushed back into Iraq. Somewhere in there. I mean, you've got these major fights and these major anti-insurgent fights in Ramadi and Fallujah and all this stuff. The Marines were there in Fallujah, of course. Did you ever find yourself thinking, man, I'd like to go back? Or were you done?
I was done. Done, but there are, I mean, Abid, the guy in the white shirt there, I had written him a couple letters, and he had communicated back. I had high hopes of maybe being able to go back there one day, you know, as a civilian,
as a tourist
and
or
just
something.
go and experience their culture, where they're at, get to meet his family in a peacetime,
Sure.
where they feel secure, and
Yeah.
we don't have to have military all over the place,
Yeah.
and there's no insert. But again, I have no idea where Abbott's at. I have no idea where his son Leak is at.
Yeah.
I have no idea where any of these guys are at. 15 years later, and there's
It's kinda
still
wonder.
a sense of. I do think about wanting to try and call him and see if I could reach out to him
Trying
and see where he's
somehow
at.
to
Yeah.
find him. Did you ever, think about, getting back in? I don't even know if that was a possibility or not.
No.
But did you? Just I did my
No.
time. I was in two conflicts. I, made my contribution. And
Yeah, and it wasn't even that. It was it was different. I'm out. By the time
yeah.
my whole time while I was getting out, processing out, and all that stuff, it was still the removing the troops from the country and all that. It wasn't until I was out and I really kind of knew what I was going to be doing that the insurgents really started kicking in, and you started hearing more about the roadside bombs and all these different things that were going on, and it was escalating, and now we got people kicking in doors and looking for these bad guys, and we find Saddam Hussein, and again there's that sense of, okay, we've got this guy, it's going to all be over, there's no more need to fight because your man's caught. But that wasn't it. It's just the opportunity of the bad guys coming in when there's a bad situation and restoring people's hope, because I can do that right now. The GIs are gone, right? They're not here to protect you. We are, we will support you as long as you support us.
Wow.
And so that's where we're at today.
Yeah. I mean, Iraq, there's still a big question mark over the country. But I mean, I think the main thing I've learned from these discussions with you, we have one more to go, but the main thing I've learned from these discussions with you is that a perception that I had was not correct. And I mentioned it, I think, in an earlier discussion, this perception that, we go in 2003, blow some stuff up, defeat the military really quickly, and there's not much thinking about, what comes next. But it sounds like that wasn't the case, that you guys were thinking a lot about hearts and minds, building trust, establishing relationships with the people. I think that's the main thing I've learned from these discussions. And
and again, it's what we get from what they want us to, the media wants us to perceive how things go.
Well, it's true. I mean, it's the reports on the looting, that's dramatic, but I guess it's not a very dramatic report that Gunny Sergeant Dyer had an interesting conversation with an Iraqi today.
Right. Yeah.
It's just not so flashy.
It's not gonna stir people to watch the news,
Exactly.
But at the same time, there was a lot of hope by the military that was there. There was a lot of hope by the military upper echelon. I mean, there's a lot of thought out policy, restraints put on the military on how we're going to conduct ourselves, because it was we got to build trust. We got to build this sense of, we're here for the long haul to help you guys, not to occupy you. And build that confidence and get that security base. I mean, we were training, so like after Desert Storm, we had gone right back over on our regular 6-month deployment and started training the military in Kuwait to be able to stand up against Saddam Hussein. And obviously we did what we did, and then we pulled out and said we can't spend any more money there. 10 years later, we're back in
that
Iraq.
region,
And then so, you're thinking, okay, so we're going to be able to train, and that's what they tried to do. They tried to build a military, but the problem was a lot of the guys who were in that. I mean, that's one of the things as I think about it, one of the big things I heard a lot of times was how the military compounds were being bombed by these insurgents to really cause lack of hope, lack of security. Your military is not going to be able to stop us, blah, 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 Again, the GIs are gone. You guys aren't trained properly to be able to come against us, who've been doing this for 40, 50 years in the mountains and all that type of stuff. So, so it's really, it is, we said earlier, there wasn't a lot of lives lost. during Desert Storm, or even here. And I think we actually lost more after the war was over with all the insurgents
Oh, I'm
fighting
sure
and
of it,
stuff,
I'm sure
you
of
know,
it.
all that
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm sure of it.
And you know, you think about it. Even me as a Marine, 20-year career Marine, you ask that question of, was it worth it? Was it worth the one life? Was it worth the 20, the 100, the 300, the 400 lives, the 600 lives? Which is still so small compared to Vietnam or any
Sure.
other battles.
Yeah.
But you know, I look at it sometimes, and sometimes I say yes, it was. Most of the time, it's no, it wasn't, because I think
Mhm.
about my personal experiences and the relationships, you know, what me and the Marines that I was with was able to accomplish. Was it worth it? Yes, it was. But when you look at the overall, where we're at 15 years later, was it worth it? You know, you gotta think.
Yeah, I just think, you know, the point of view of an outsider, you know, the case of South Vietnam, the case of Iraq, the case of Afghanistan. I mean, at the very least, you guys gave those folks a shot. You gave them a shot. And, you know, of course, the insurgents come in, or the Viet Cong come in, or the Taliban come in, and ISIS, you know, and all this stuff. But, you know, there was a genuine attempt to give these countries a shot, you know. And, well, anyway, let's end this discussion here, and we have one more to go.